Hey everyone, Dave here reviewing the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. entitled Devils You Know, which is bullshit. Because I thought they were going to make some kind of reference, some kind of connection to Daredevil in some form of capacity, just an Easter egg. I wasn't expecting him to guest star or anything like that, otherwise they would have made that some kind of big deal. There would have been like articles saying, oh my god, Chris Cox is going to reprise the role of Daredevil. I wasn't expecting that, but I was hoping maybe for like some kind of thing in the background or some kind of brief mention by one of the characters, and maybe that ties into their investigation of what they're trying to do, that kind of thing. But unfortunately, that wasn't what they were referring to. They were referring to what was going to be some rather hefty revelations in this episode and some really dire situations that our characters found themselves in. Now, before I get started with the review, I want to wish you guys all a happy Back to the Future Day. Today marks the day that Marty went to the future on October 21st, 2015, and to commemorate that, I'm wearing my t-shirt. It is called A Link to the Future. You got Link there in the DeLorean. It says Song of Time because he is the hero of time from Ocarina of Time. So I think that's pretty cool. So I just wanted to show that off and wish you guys all a happy Back to the Future Day, because I feel like today is truly special. Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies and also one of my favorite trilogies of all time. At one point, I was kind of tempted to go to the movie theater because my local theater is running a marathon starting at 4:30 all the way until probably nighttime of all three Back to the Future movies up on the big screen and in XD, so it's a larger screen format. But then I thought, it's $15. It's not that bad, or $20, $15 to $20. It's not that bad, but at the same time, I have to deal with other people. Just watch it in the comfort of my own home. So anyways, now that I got that out of the way, let's go ahead and review this new episode of S.H.I.E.L.D., which, like I said, had to do with an awful lot of big, rather hefty events. And one of those events is actually Hunter finally confronting Ward, which I gotta be honest, I was not expecting for it to happen so quickly. But then again, this new version of S.H.I.E.L.D., as opposed to that first season, is moving at a much more brisk pace. So they're trying to do things as quickly as possible to grasp your attention and keeping things exciting and moving. So in this episode, Hunter gets taken from point A to point B in the trunk of a car, and from there he actually meets up with Ward. He's right behind him. I was like, oh shit, he's right there. So the fact that he went in there alone, I was legitimately fearing for his life, because Hunter's a very likable character, but the fact that he was by himself, you got all those Hydra agents around, and then you finally got Ward right behind him, and he's about to turn. I'm like, oh my god, we're actually doing this right now. And fortunately, May shows up in the nick of time. I love May's return in this episode, because not only did I like how she took part of the mission, because I appreciated her fight in last week's episode where she took out those guys that were about to have their way with her. That was actually a rather dark place that S.H.I.E.L.D. went in, even though it didn't actually go there, it just implied it. But still, I appreciated that fight, but she didn't actually she wasn't side by side with Hunter amongst that whole entire Fight Club scene that they had going there. Whereas here, they're actually doing stuff together. They're actually taking the guys out, moving from cover to cover. It was exciting. But this psychotic son of a bitch, Ward, has another trick up his sleeve. And so he pulls up this feed, and he already has a couple of Hydra agents tailing Dr. Andrew, who is May's ex-husband. And of course, it makes sense for this to happen, considering that he sent Von Strucker's kid, Werner Von Strucker, to go and be part of his class or whatever. So now he's got intel on him. He knows where he goes, where he shops, that kind of thing. And so he has men there. And he threatens that if May and Hunter do not pull back, he is going to kill Andrew. And you can kind of tell that May still has some kind of affection for him. And we saw some tension between the two of them in that scene where they finally actually meet up at Coulson's headquarters, which is actually the first time May actually steps foot in there ever since her leave. So that was actually a rather refreshing scene to have Coulson and May walk down a hallway talking to each other like old times. So that was pretty cool. But this situation was rather exciting and tense, because I like all the characters involved, and at Ward, as much of just a dighead of a villain he is, he's a villain that I love to hate. And I'm mixed. Part of me wishes that Hunter would have taken him down, but at the same time, I understand why he had to get away. I'm just glad that Hunter was actually able to get a shot at it. He didn't just get off scot-free. No, Hunter actually managed to hit him, and that give him something, give Hunter something, some credibility. So I like that he managed to get one shot in. I was like, okay, good. He didn't just miss completely. He wasn't a stormtrooper for that entire the duration of that fight. But then we get to what I perceive to be a very, very fun thing to analyze, which is that ending scene of the marketplace blowing up with the gas leaking and Von Strucker lighting it up. Here is where we start to get a little analytical with things, because people were referring to this as a humongous shocker within the episode. I remember seeing a couple of tweets, but I was trying not to read too much of them because at the time I didn't watch the episode. So right there, Ming-Na Wen talks about the big shocker in last night's episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm expecting some kind of twist or something like that. The shocker's not that much of a shocker because we don't know 100% what went down in that mart. Because for one, we do see blood, we do see some shoes, we saw gasoline being poured and finally being ignited by that lighter that Von Strucker had, but we only see Von Strucker, the kid, run out of the mart. If I remember correctly, there were 2 other Hydra agents in that mart, yet we don't see them escaping. Okay, so what happened to them? My guess is that maybe Andrew's not dead necessarily, because like I said, we saw a pair of feet. Maybe I have to go back and rewatch the episode, but for all we know, that could have been one of the Hydra agents and not necessarily Andrew. Andrew maybe might be hiding some kind of dark secret himself. I mean, he was trying to say something to May back when they were in Coulson's secret base. He was saying, you know, the whole "it's not you, it's me" type of thing. Like May even commented on, but maybe he was trying to explain himself as to why he was the one that left. And maybe this has something to do with it. And like I said, being that this is Marvel, characters could come back. I mean, we saw Coulson legitimately die. So anything can happen. You know, we got aliens coming from the sky. So maybe, just maybe, Andrew did manage to get away, and maybe that wasn't his feet that we saw there, surrounded by a pool of blood at the very end of the episode. We also saw Coulson, Mac, and Daisy trying to work with the ACTU to find out who exactly is going around killing all these Inhumans, bringing back that woman. I can't remember the character's name nor I'm bad with names when it comes to TV shows. When it's a movie and they repeat it often, very often throughout that movie, I tend to memorize it. But here, oh my god, I'm blanking on her name, but it was the girl with the red hair that was able to duplicate herself in the finale from season 2. That was part of the Inhumans, along with Lincoln and Jiaying, that were part of that entire sanctuary throughout season 2. She comes back here, actually going up to Coulson and saying, "Hey, I think something's up, please help me." And so she tracks down these 2 other Inhumans at the beginning of the episode, but then Lash, who's actually the name of this giant monster that's going around killing Inhumans with dreads that we saw in the hospital back in episode 2, I believe, when Lincoln was still a doctor. They tried to track him down, and a couple of developments are made, like the fact that this guy this monster is actually cognitively talking to this one dude, saying, "Hey, plant these viruses so I can track these Inhumans down, and then I can go and kill them." And at first they thought that maybe he was the brains of the operation, but it turns out that maybe he was the one that was being puppeted by this guy. But the only actual real revelation about this creature that's going around killing people is the fact that he's actually able to turn back into a human. Therefore, this leads the possibility of this creature, Lash, being anybody. He could simply hide in plain sight, and who knows, maybe he might end up being one of the characters in this TV show, whether it be in season 3 or maybe from season 2, or maybe we overlooked it. I don't know what it was, but for some reason I thought of the possibility that maybe it's Cal, Daisy's father. He kind of has a similar chin going on, but that would be a little bit of a stretch. Still, I would love if it's some kind of character that we have seen but never could have guessed that it was him. Who knows? Maybe it's Andrew. Maybe it's Andrew. Maybe there's a reason why he doesn't want humans to go out into the field. I mean, there could be some kind of connection there, and like I said, there's a reason for why maybe he left May. Maybe there's a reason for why we only saw we saw 2 Hydra members not leave that marketplace, and we saw Von Strucker leaving, and he looked pretty scared. He looked scared. I mean, sure, he was running away from the fire or whatever, but this is Von Strucker. This is a guy who just killed a guy 2 episodes ago, just easy like that, you know, like with almost delight in his face. If he had lit up the fuse and he had calculated accordingly and had known he had enough time to walk out of the market, he would have just like jogged out of the way and just like just like looked away like they do in these TV shows, alright? Bad guys do that in these kinds of TV shows all the time. But the fact that he ran out looking rather panicked, maybe, just maybe, there might be something up here. It could be a little bit of a stretch, but man, if it's Andrew, there could be a way for them to tie it all together, especially considering now the fact that we know that this guy can transform back into human form. And oh my god, the plot thickens. And even though it didn't necessarily happen in this episode, the plot seems like it's going to thicken for Simmons and the rest of the team, now that Simmons is finally going to let it out in the open as to why she's trying to rebuild the portal and trying to go back to where she was stranded for that amount of time. And this episode simply just took some baby steps, and it could be a little frustrating that no humongous revelation was really made with her character, but I like that at least at the very end, they left us hanging with the fact that Simmons is for sure, straightforward, gonna tell Fitz what is going on. She legitimately says, I'm gonna tell you what's going on, so hopefully that's what we open with in the next episode, and we put a little bit more focus on that, because personally, a little frustrated, and this is probably my only gripe with the episode, a little frustrated that Simmons was simply just thrusted back into the background with her secrecy about why it is that she's trying to go back, why she's drawing all these schematics, because besides that, not much new was made. Not many new things came out of her in this week's episode. In fact, we got to see more of Bobby wanting to go back into the field and having more screen time than Simmons. Please make that switch there, please. So Devils You Know was a very thrilling episode filled with a lot of revelations and fast-paced changes in the game that made me feel like this is practically my favorite episode of Season 3 so far. And for that, I have to give Devils You Know a high 8 out of 10. That's the quality of all these episodes. They've been getting slightly better and better, but they haven't made that humongous leap over to like 9 territory. But I feel like if they keep things up, we will reach there eventually. But let me just say this, that if I was still doing decimals, that point number, whatever that may be, would definitely be going up if I was still to do that, but that would just cause more editing work for me, so because I'm lazy. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. What are you going to be doing to celebrate Back to the Future Day, and I'll see you guys next time.